Tonight on The Conversation, we ask, is the controversy over Dennis Chung's appointment as Chief Technical Director of the Financial Investigations Division a sign of political overreach or due process at work? With questions swirling about transparency, timing, and trust, we speak first with PNP candidate East Central St. Catherine, Raymond Pryce, and then with Government Senator Abka Fitz-Henley. This is The Conversation, and I am Kwame Thomas. Mr. Pryce, how are you?
Not too bad, thank you for having me.
So I would just want to get right into it. What is your primary concern about Dennis Chung's appointment?
Well, the People's National Party has been making the case. The appointment in this case is infradig for a couple of reasons. We start off with a position that had set job requirements, and a main requirement has been removed to facilitate Dennis Chung being able to meet the requirements. So it's the case like anybody that applies for a job knows before they apply for the job what the job requirements are in terms of qualification, experience, etc. And in this case, the person that was selected did not meet the original job requirements. And then when you hear from the shout, one of them, and very important one I'll explain shortly, has been removed. That is a big red flag, and the first question sign should arise right there. The next thing is that Dennis Chung, prior to getting the job, had auditioned in public when the matter first became known through the media that the Integrity Commission had referred to the Financial Investigations Division the Prime Minister's declaration, which for years cannot be certified as valid. Dennis Chung did several media interviews saying that he thought the referral to the Financial Investigation Division was unnecessary. When a specific element of the reason for the referral became public, the Prime Minister being linked to some 28 bank accounts, and that some of the bank accounts had very questionable transactions within short periods of time between and among them, Dennis Chung, again in a public interview, says that's not a big deal. In fact, he defended it and said that people can have accounts for different reasons. So you now have a situation where the person that is in charge of the investigation has already told the public that he believes the matter should never have been referred to investigation. And he went further to say that there is no issue. Therefore, the question of objectivity, now that he's in the job, now that the requirement was removed so he could get the job, causes people to say, oh, he had auditioned. So it's not as if he found the job found him.
So then the question that comes to mind immediately then is that you do think, that this was a politically engineered appointment. That's what you're saying.
I could not have put it better. In fact, I love the way you have put it, and that's the way I will now use it, politically engineered. And your viewers might ask the question, so what? Dennis and Andrew brethren, him give him brethren a work, them brethren a eat a food. And if Dennis Chung has the eat a food mentality, that's fine for him. But this is a national institution. The FID interacts with other similar investigative bodies across the world and across the region. And the qualification of having law enforcement experience is critical. Now, people from the JLP says, well, there are people who work at the FID who have that qualification, so the Chief Technical Director doesn't need it. But then I ask you the question, if somebody was appointed as police commissioner who had never had any experience at all in law enforcement or in the military, would that be acceptable?
But wouldn't that be a little different though? Because and I love the fact that you look at the police force.
Yeah.
As commissioner, he would be overseeing a number of things, but primarily we're looking at the fact that it's a police force, so his core requirement should be in law enforcement.
Right.
While you move to the Financial Investigations Division now, your core thing is about financial investigations. Would the argument then be that he has to have some amount of background in investigation You know, that's what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, and not just investigation. Forensic investigation into financial crimes, because the chief technical director of the FID is basically the police commissioner of the FID.
But being though someone with so many years of accounting, one would make the assumption, or one could rather make the assumption that having sat on many boards, BOJ and a number of others, it would have put him in a position where he's capable of putting his experience and value judgment to that. So he comes
So
with...
because I watch movies with pilots taking off flying planes, and because I might have been appointed...
No, man, it's a little different than that one. He has flown.
Hold on. And because, no, he has flown as a passenger, not as a pilot. You cannot employ a passenger to pilot the plane.
But it's financing, though. And we're looking at the fact that over the years, if what the opposition has, well, the government has stated that there has been a number of individuals who have led, who have led and done so effectively without having that particular
and that's not
requirement.
True. That's not true. Let us follow and keep in our mind that this is happening simultaneously with some other developments.
Go on.
So you can't take them in isolation. Back in the day, you had an Office of the Contractor General.
Yeah.
Today, you have the Integrity Commission, in which institution the Office of the Contractor General, has now been subsumed. The requirements for the person to head the different units of the Integrity Commission has also changed. The Financial Investigation Division in its current form is unique and different from how it started out.
Yes.
And remember, Jamaica is part of a global financial system. And you have had, in this country, banks have had difficulty with what they call correspondence banking.
Yes.
In other words, country A may say to Jamaica, you can't have corresponding banking certification or clearance with us because we have concerns about how you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yes.
And part of changing that so that Jamaica is properly integrated into the global financial market is to ensure that the Financial Investigation Division is at the level it now is. But let me ask you a question. How many times have you heard the Jamaica Labour Party, through the Prime Minister, for example, said, we're not going backward. That things that used to happen a certain way, they're not going to go back to that.
Not going down
so
that
why cite something in history and then make a U-turn on a one-way and go down the same road you say you're not going back down?
So then the question that I want to ask, in light of all that you have said, are we dealing primarily with a personal problem or a process problem? So is it personal or process?
Process problem. I have no problems with Dennis Chung. I first met Dennis Chung many years ago when I hosted the Breakfast Club. I cannot tell you how often I have interacted with Dennis, and I cannot tell you how often I have sat as the host of a program interviewing Dennis. But that's fine. Me and Dennis can always lick elbow and halo one another. And he can talk to me about riding bicycles and other social activities. I have no problem with Dennis, the individual.
But
I have a problem, however, that this individual that had previously presented himself as objective, as honorable, as believing in the premium value of personal integrity, is now the face, the poster child of corruption.
So you're saying that he should resign?
Well, I don't know why I'm taking it in the first place. This is what is shocking to me, since you raise the fact as to whether it's personal or not. Because the Dennis I thought I knew would have said, no, I'm not going to carry myself and my family in this public situation for taking a job for which a critical requirement had to be removed for me to be able to get it. Dennis could not have qualified for the job had that not been removed. No, let us link it to something else, because it's not about me explaining what I understand. I want the viewers to understand what I'm explaining. So you have a 100-meter race at the Olympics.
Yeah.
And you have 110-meter hurdle.
Yeah.
The difference between the hurdles and the 100-meter is that all lanes have the same number of hurdles between the starting line and the finishing line.
Plus there's an additional 10-meter.
No. How would you feel seeing somebody on the podium getting the gold medal if the hurdles in his lane was removed and he was basically running a flat race while everybody had to be.
So you're saying it's unfair.
You wouldn't celebrate that person as
Okay.
being an authentic recipient of the gold medal. And in this case, Dennis, sorry, brethren, you are an inauthentic recipient of the gold medal. You did not jump over the hurdles.
So he should return same.
The hurdles were removed.
So he should return same.
It's not even whether he returns it or not. Personally, it's neither here nor there.
This is a matter of integrity.
The question Dennis must answer every morning when he looks in the mirror, 15 years from now, when Jamaicans have researched this and described you, Dennis, as the face of the biggest act of corruption in the country's history since independence, how would you feel?
So let's move a little now.
Yes.
How do you think that these developments will reflect on the independence of the Public Services Commission?
Well, the cabinet, as the executive arm of government, the executive branch of government, through whatever shenanigans it did, removed a job requirement. I am curious as to the opinion of the Public Services Commission to fill a post with a lesser candidate meeting lesser requirements than previously it was seeking a candidate to fill.
And then we asked about the effects that you think, the mid-process job requirement here changes would have on public's confidence now, because that's the issue that we're now having.
Can I make reference to another media house? The Jamaica Gleaner did an editorial where it described the situation in the following way. It's a matter of public trust and public confidence. There is no scenario any longer where the public can believe that any result of any investigations led by Dennis Chung can be acceptable as objective and appropriate. Because remember, long before he got the job, basically Dennis in his interview said, if I was at the FID, I would reject this as unnecessary. Maybe it's when people heard him say that them say, okay, perfect pankut to put in the position.
So you're pretty much arguing then, as we ease into the break, that he's incapable of being objective based on those particular utterances.
He has disqualified himself as an objective arbiter because prior to getting the position, he told the entire nation and the world by extension that he thought it should be rejected.
And he was given that those utterances was from a quote-unquote professional perspective.
Yes, when we did not know it was an audition for a part in a theatrical production, because the FID is now a proper pantomime.
Raymond Pryce paints a picture of eroding trust and creeping political control. After the break, we ask, is disappointment a symptom of deeper democratic decline? Continue to stay with us. This is The Conversation. Welcome back to The Conversation. So just before the break, you described the FID as being the consummate, proper pantomime, as you said it. But, what are we want to look now on the whole idea of reforms, because it's not just sufficient to see this problem, but what kind of reforms could we put in place? So what reforms would your party, the People's National Party, pursue to prevent future controversies like this?
You have an institution that is staffed. The organizational structure is approved. The core competencies for each position are approved. The job requirements in terms of qualification for each position is approved. The People's National Party will honor the approved organizational structure, the approved core competencies, and the approved job requirements. And I tell you why that's important. And you made mention of the Public Services Commission. When an institution becomes part of a ministry, department, or agency, it's not just dreamt up overnight. There are experts within the Ministry of Finance and Public Service who must sign off, usually, on each position, each element of every job, and match that with compensation and remuneration. Really and truly, no. The only time individuals give themselves a salary increase in the public domain is when a prime minister gives himself and his cabinet 300% increase. If you have a job...
Well, that's the prime minister's remit, right?
No,
I mean, because we have seen earlier prime ministers have done the same thing on both sides of the fence.
And I'm so happy whenever persons like yourself, journalists and media presenters, ask that question, because my only response then is, what do you describe progress as? There was a time when slavery was acceptable, and I would have been out cutting cane, but it's no longer acceptable. Am I now in 2025, with all the collective intellect that the world now has, would I want to make reference to something in the past that I've already said was rubbish?
So we're saying then that the Prime Minister, it should not have been the case whereby the Prime Minister has recommended a 300% increase. You're saying that some other mechanism should have been in place, or some other mechanism was already in place?
Some other mechanism has to be in place going forward that will prevent the executive branch of government to have political overreach in critical decisions. Because I put it to you that somebody heading a ministry, such as a permanent secretary, cannot in and of herself or himself increase his or her colleagues' salaries. So if we are describing a modern democracy with systems of transparency and probity, we cannot find those answers in the past.
So that's one of the things that the People's National Party would seek to put in place.
That's one of the things. Let me tell you the other thing to know. Why I said we can't look on the Dennis Chung scandal in isolation, right? Because a couple months ago, an individual that met all the qualifications for a job was promoted in an acting post for the job. And the leader of government business in both the lower house and the Senate made public their issue with an individual who was already in an institution being promoted. Promoted not because a job requirement was removed, promoted because he had already shown on merit, meritocracy. You understand? So my question is to the hypocrites. Why is Kamina Johnson-Smith now so silent? Why is Edmund Bartlett now so silent?
How could this have been different though? For example, we see, so rumor has it that a member of the People's National Party was present at a wedding, for example.
Yes.
And a particular individual was also there, and said individual now sits at the helm of the IC.
No, no. It's the same individual I'm speaking about. Said individual now has a post, an acting post, in the department of the Integrity Commission, for which he had already been employed and for which no requirements were removed. Well, that's a difference, you know.
Okay.
In the Dennis Chung case, they removed
something was so a hurdle was removed for Dennis Chung.
All hurdles were removed.
So we're saying, so pretty much, Dennis Chung is running a 100-meter race,
while
as you have said it, while everybody is running a 110-meter hurdle. And this individual, no. If this individual was elevated to the top, couldn't one set of people or individuals see that as the opposition's way of having their person in the middle of the fray, even though?
So let me respond to that in three ways. As I've mentioned before, the people who made an issue about that job you're talking about was the leader of government business in the Senate and the leader of government business in the lower house. If they were protesting on principle then, I guess they sold the principles now because Dennis had to get that job. Which is why I call both Kamina Johnson-Smith and Ed Bartlett hypocrites on the matter, right? Principles are not like the seasons. They ought not change that easily, right?
But circumstances alter cases. Perhaps that's what they're looking at.
Then let us publish the difference now.
And the circumstances.
And the circumstance. Because in the first case, the incumbent no requirements were removed for his promotion to an acting post.
But there's an issue.
But you know, as I mentioned the word acting, it triggers a thought. Why is this so important? Because we have to connect the dots.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister had previously attempted to create an acting position for the Chief Justice when the Constitution does not speak of acting.
Yeah.
So we get a sense that this Prime Minister becomes irascible with situations and personalities that he does not like in positions that will give an outcome other than the outcome he desires. So in this case, Dennis Chung has been placed there literally as the court jester, so that when the king said dance, he is going to toss out the investigation.
So then the next question, though, is should Jamaica move towards public vetting rather, move towards public vetting or confirmation hearings for major appointments such as this? Think that's necessary?
Starting with the Office of Governor General. Oh, but whoops, I believe in a republic. So starting with
the president,
starting with the removal of the king's private court, because that's what privy comes from, the same Latin source as private.
Yeah.
So removing from the king's court, like laggards' quarters that we have made ourselves into, removing therefore from a ceremonial representative of a titular king, to a president.
What kind of a president?
A Jamaican one.
No, man, no. So I'm talking about whether it's ceremonial or executive. What kind of president would you envision?
It would have to be executive, and I'll tell you why it will have to be executive. Because recently, and you mentioned, for example, the Public Services Commission. Recently, I hear people talking about, oh, the PNP can't ask for Dennis Chung the job to be taken from Dennis Chung because the job is appointed by the Governor General in consultation with X and Y. So you can't have executive responsibility given to a ceremonial individual. Clean up the whole thing, clean up the whole shebang. Get rid of the UK Privy Council, repatriate the head of state into the Jamaican state, determine whether or not it's going to be a full election to elect the president, or parliamentarians, having already been elected, elect a president. But that process must be modern. It must be done in consultation with the people of Jamaica, and the people of Jamaica must become comfortable with and clear about how the process will proceed.
So let's talk about balance now. How do we balance expediency with transparency, all right, and participation?
You should never put expediency and transparency on the same scale.
And participation, why not?
No. You can put transparency and participation, but not expediency.
Why not?
I'll tell you why not. And since everything is a pantomime, let me try a skit. Jano, them find out some have 28 accounts. Hold on, who that on the TV? Dennis? Where Dennis say a while ago, Juliet? Oh, him said that the 28 accounts I know is not a big deal. And him want for hire then. That's expediency. Transparency is, what is the role of the FID? What are the core competencies that its chief technical director ought properly to have? And how do we advertise in a transparent way so that the best sons and daughters of the land with the qualifications can be selected? That didn't happen. One must never sacrifice. You see, when you put things in a balance, the outcome must be acceptable.
And you're saying, in this instance, no, it's not.
Expediency is not a countermeasure for integrity.
So then, can trust in the FID be restored under this particular leadership then? Whether it's Dennis Chung or the Prime Minister, but under this leadership?
Well, fortunately, as a democracy, there's a process that will determine whether or not public trust needs to be restored in the Prime Minister. Because in a matter of months, he could be described as a former Prime Minister, and then democracy would have dealt with that.
You know what comes to mind? And based on, I love the skit that you did. You know, probably should try an audition. No.
For which job? For which job, Andrew?
Because you just looked at it that way. You know, are you then saying that the FID and the PSC rather is no longer credible because of what they have done in reaction, or what you would describe as reaction to overreach or to trauma, be that as it may?
The attempt by the cabinet, the executive branch of government, which is led by Andrew Holness, to have so recklessly destroyed public trust in the institution of the Financial Investigation Division can now only be fixed with an overall change, A, in government, where a new cabinet makes very clear what the policy position on the importance of the FID is within the scheme of the criminal justice system. Because let us not forget, people who, or issues that are investigated by the FID can lead to criminal prosecution. It's a serious position. We're not talking about the head of the Consumer Affairs
Not
Commission.
a regular theater.
We're not talking about the head of the Jamaica Library Service. We're not talking about, and the professionals that hold those positions had to meet the requirements.
So that's the question that I don't want to ask. Wasn't this done in basically, it was a collaboration between the opposition as well as the government to choose who were there, the members?
No.
The members of the PSC? Because based on my understanding,
the PSC, as in the Public Services Commission?
So was it a unilateral decision to get them there, or it was because they are a product of the Constitution?
Let me be very clear. No member of the People's National Party participated in any decision to remove a critical job requirement to have a jester in a position where a senior technocrat ought to have been. A technocrat, mind you, with law enforcement experience of 12 years vintage.
So then what you are saying, and you know, during our discussion here, is that the opposition had no idea, they were never consulted in what has been happening, or what has happened.
No, and I give you
we're looking at from the makeup to where we are now.
Hold on. So let us now pivot a bit to what is now happening in Parliament. There's a joint select committee of Parliament looking into a proposal by Everell Warmington to remove the Auditor General as a commissioner of the Integrity Commission. We know what the positions of the PNP members of the Joint Select Committee are, because media carries it. We know what the positions of the government members of the Joint Select Committee are, because media carries it. We know what the Solicitor General's opinion is, because that is happening in the People's Parliament. The Dennis Chung remove hurdles so that this unfit person should get the job happened in a cloak of secrecy.
Yes, so we understand that this is somewhat of a different issue.
Same issue.
But because Marlon Morgan is now laying criticism as recently, earlier, about this particular issue as well.
No, let me tell you why it's not the same issue. Or why it's not a different issue, rather.
Is it the same or is it not? Because I'm thinking that it's different.
The ecosystem of ending financial crimes and illegal enrichment has a couple of entities involved. You have the Integrity Commission, you have the Financial Investigation Division, you also have the Director of Public Prosecutions, and you have the Jamaica Constabulary Force. That system must be protected. So if you are saying that the two results are identical, why then go through a joint select committee of Parliament to determine the changes in the structure of the Integrity Commission, but not go to a joint select committee of Parliament to determine the changes in the structure of the FID? That's where the expedience arose. So
time is against us, unfortunately, but you're saying then that the PSC and the decision to appoint Dennis Chung is definitely corrupt. It's a corrupt one.
The corruption is not with the PSC. The corruption is with Holness and his cabinet for removing that critical component, that critical job requirement. Years in law enforcement. So put it this way.
How would that look, though? How would that look? Would it be like Andrew, and I'm going back to theatre, Andrew call, yo, bossy, I want to take off the requirement there and put in Dennis. That's all I need for deal with it. Seen? Word. And just hang up. That's how you think that he went?
He's the chairman of cabinet.
So he did
and by the way, as chairman of cabinet, he signed off on the bill, the Integrity Commission bill, that went to Parliament, that was debated to become the Integrity Commission Act. I have gone to Gordon House and I have the Hansard records of the speech he gave in defense of the very section that he has now gone to the courts for the courts to quash, which is a section on illicit enrichment. So it's as if Andrew designed the FID to say, look there. And the FID had the nerve to say, look here. Stay same. So the FID and the Integrity Commission is a knife. And the same knife for stick sheep, stick goat, and the goat are Allah now.
You know, I want you to come back next week.
I'm here.
Come back next week.
I'm here.
You know, because
the only way I won't be able to come back next week is if this weekend Andrew calls the election, and then I have to fine-tune my activities in East Central St. Catherine.
Wow. So let me just go and close this segment. You know, tell me about that. You know, so you're going, so Alan de Terlang, that's who you're going up against, right?
Yeah, I'm actually not going up against Alan de Terlang. I'm going for the people of East Central St. Catherine.
Mr. Pryce calls for deeper reforms and greater accountability. But what does the government has to say? After the break, we're joined by Senator Abka Fitz-Henley. More when we return. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Always an honor.
Welcome back to the conversation. On this segment, we look at process integrity and public criticism. And for that aspect of the discussion, we speak with Government Senator Abka Fitz-Henley. Welcome to the conversation. How are you?
Thank you so much, Kwame. It's good to be here. Hello to your viewers.
Yes, so
I must say to your listeners because I'm a former radio man.
Oh, man. So we have listeners, but it's primarily viewers. You know, but I'll want to jump right into what's hot now. You know, how do you respond to the opposition's claim that this appointment was politically engineered?
And I assume you mean the appointment of Dennis Chung,
yes,
as Chief Technical Director to the Financial Investigation Division, FID. Well, look, there are processes in Jamaica which are time-honored. One of those processes which takes care of appointments to certain positions in the public sector and other key positions is via the Public Services Commission, which comprises of honorable Jamaicans who are not known to have any political color. And the Public Services Commission coordinated the appointment of Mr. Chung. They had superintendents of the recruitment process and the appointment process. This is a Public Services Commission that has served across administrations. Sure, there has been shift in personnel. And, you know, for those of us who understand our history, the Public Services Commission was founded decades ago as an independent body, which has supervision concerning these appointments, from the recruitment process to the recommendation for an appointment. For the opposition to suggest that the appointment is one made by the political directorate is factually incorrect. It is not true.
So there was an allusion earlier. You know, PNP candidate Raymond Pryce had stated that the opposition had, nor does it have any hand in the selection of members of the PSC. You know, is that factually accurate, that allusion?
Well, I mean, Jamaica's democratic process has been guided by, in terms of the appointment of the PSC. They're appointed based on the recommendation of the administration. That does not mean that they do the bidding of the administration. It doesn't naturally follow. So the opposition having a say in who is appointed to the PSC has never been done in Jamaica's history. So the validity, the relevancy of that kind of point, I don't think it holds much water.
Tell me about the job change criteria. That has been in the media for quite some time now, and that was stated earlier. You know, why was that particular change in the criteria for the technical director of the FID? Why was that change made? You know?
So I began by noting that the PSC is an ostensibly independent body which conducts the appointment and prior there to the recruitment process of key office holders. I am a government senator. I'm a member of the legislature, parliamentary secretary in the office of the Prime Minister, which the Constitution contemplates as an assistant minister. And I'm chairman of the Jamaica Labour Party's Communication Task Force. I could not tell you why an adjustment, a specific adjustment, was made to the job specification for any particular post, in particular concerning a sensitive appointment as FID. That's a matter for the PSC, if they are so moved, to answer directly. What I can point out, though, is that it is not abnormal. It happens perhaps on a bi-weekly basis, when in the entire public sector, a recruitment process is being had, perhaps suitable candidates are not found, and those who are supervising the process might make an adjustment, whether to increase the talent pool in order to ensure that the best possible individual is in the job. That's
selected.
1 point. There's a second part to it. I think the key point, though, is that Dennis Chung's qualifications include what? A chartered accountant. Yes, he has a master's in chartered accounting, or in accounting. The question, therefore, is, has there been anyone who has served in the top job at the FID who has had similar qualifications? And you know the answer to that question, Kwame? Yes, at least 4.
Yeah.
I don't like to bring people into the political phrase. I won't name drop, but in and around 2008,
But
2010.
I don't get the impression that that's the issue,
answer.
though.
In
Well, go
around
on.
2008, 2010, an individual served who had qualifications in accounting. Another served qualifications in business administration. One was an attorney at law. Another served as, had qualifications as an economist. I dare say to you, the majority of people who have served the FID in the top job, whether in a temporary or a permanent capacity, have not had law enforcement qualifications. So this argument by the opposition that lack of law enforcement qualifications to take up the post, the managerial post of CTD of the FID, should be a disqualifier. It's a specious argument. It lacks merit. Because the majority of people who have served in the top job at the FID have not had law enforcement qualifications.
But the argument that's being put forward now, you know, is that the changes have been made to include, you know, that particular requirement. Why put it back to accommodate him? And some persons have argued that this paints the picture that this particular post has been so engineered politically for him at this point in time.
I could not conclude that the qualification was put back to accommodate
or removed.
The individual.
The qualification was, this particular requirement was removed.
It was taken away to accommodate a particular individual, because a gentleman who served the FID before, not Justin Felice, who served before Selvin Hay, yes, former DCP. He did not have direct law enforcement qualifications. He did some work in academia in money laundering, but he's an attorney at law.
But
so, in other words,
no, is that we're moving forward. So why go back? Because what we want
moving forward.
Yeah,
yes, let's deal with that.
Yeah, what we want
the
to get.
The folks who acted in that post, yes, acting CTD of the FID. One, guess what he was? A chartered accountant. This is post-Selvin-Hay, you know.
And he didn't have the requirements that you're stating.
Didn't have law enforcement qualifications. And the other individual who served for approximately a year.
Didn't. So
yes,
the
question, qualifications in information technology.
So the question that's on everybody's lips, the question that they want, or the reassurance that they want, rather, from you, Senator, is how do you reassure the public that this wasn't a pre-selected outcome?
Well, you know, let me answer it this way. That's a question that is better put to the PSC. However, I have no reason to doubt the competence, the integrity, and the good intentions of the men and women who serve the PSC. I believe it's unfortunate and unbecoming that the opposition would seek to suggest that the good men and women of the PSC would allow the process to be compromised to appoint a predetermined candidate. I believe it's an unfortunate and unbecoming suggestion, which the opposition, and I hear you say the question is on many people's lips. I think the question is on the lips of the opposition and their sympathizers. Yeah, that's my view.
So then the question that you can answer more directly then is the PSC truly insulated from political influences in matters like this one?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Yes. So does this appointment then reflect the government's commitment to transparency and due process?
Well, I can answer. The government of Jamaica is committed to transparency and due process. The government of Jamaica is committed as well to not interfering in processes which are intended to best function in a manner that the political directorate does not meddle. And the opposition has been calling on the administration to intervene and rescind an appointment made by people who comprise a body which is independent. How obscene would that be? That would be inappropriate interference. But because they don't like the appointment of this individual who has served across the public sector on boards, has served across the private sector to include Daring, Bunting, and Golding, they don't like the appointment. So therefore, the government of Jamaica is being called upon by the opposition to interfere in this process. That would be highly inappropriate. You would agree with me, Kwame?
Well, after the break, the senator maintains that all was done properly and that criticisms are misplaced. Still, how does the government explain the optics? More when we continue on the conversation. Welcome back to the conversation. I'm sat here with Government Senator Abka Fitz-Henley. So what I want you to respond to, Senator, how should the government interpret the public backlash? You know, is it fair critique or is it political theater?
I think for the most part, it's political theater and contrived outrage instigated by the opposition. And that is not to say that there might not be a Jamaican who is observing and has questions about the process. And that's how we approach those concerns with humility, and we explain. That's why I'm here as well. I mean, if I was only thinking that it was this concern regarding the FID appointment is just the opposition making mischief, perhaps I wouldn't be here. But I appreciate that there might be well-thinking Jamaicans who might be confused by the narrative of the opposition and want questions answered. And therefore I'm here. Some folks have said inopportune timing just before an election. Well, Mr. Felice, I keep saying Mr. Felice, Fitz-Henley departed the post over a year ago, and the recruitment process has been ongoing for some time based on what is in the public domain, and it has culminated a few weeks ago with the appointment.
So
I cannot say that the recruitment process should have been done more quickly as opposed to now. And the truth of the matter is that whether election is around the corner or not, institutions, bodies, they have to carry out their business, and the PSC did what they have to do.
Well, you know, that's coming particular on the heels of the fact that, so yes, Fitz-Henley has demitted office. The post was being advertised for some time. And then fast forward, we see November, then we see December, and there's a difference between the requirements. Move from December now, we're in May. And then we see an appointment nowhere in June, and we're seeing that. So the issue might have been, is it that we could not have found anyone that would have fit the bill as they were, and so a change had to be made, and now that the change has been made, then it has been so engineered for this particular individual, Dennis Chung, to be a part of it or to come in as a CTD.
I'll give you one better.
Head.
I note in the advertisement, the post of Director General of the FID was advertised. You notice that? I'm not too sure why, because the statute does not contemplate a Director General of the FID. The statute speaks to a Chief Technical Director. Whether the change had any connection to what I just alluded to, I don't know. That's a matter for the PSC. The point I'm making is, okay, concerned about the change. Yes? Are we concerned that somebody who does not have direct law enforcement experience is at the helm of the FID? Majority of folks who have served, either in an acting or permanent capacity, have not had law enforcement experience. And the opposition did not have a problem with that.
No, well,
I guess wonder, what is the problem with Dennis Chung? Is it that because he used to work at DB&G in the 1990s that they are concerned that he's now at the FID? I don't know.
The argument that has been proffered earlier now, you know, is that things have changed, and so we need not go back, and this individual is not seen as being fully objective in his pronouncement. But you do acknowledge,
that's unfortunate.
though.
You do deal with the objectivity point.
Okay.
That's unfortunate. You know, Dennis Chung is an individual who I don't know well beyond interviewing him when I used to work in media for over a decade. I recall asking him about a controversy regarding Portia Simpson Miller's over $50 million travel bill within a particular time. And some folks were suggesting inordinate expenditure. And then it's clear the air. He said, no, what you'd have to look at is value for money. He has defended positions which might, in the public opinion, seem to make his argument supportive of the then governing PNP or the then current opposition PNP. And he has, in his capacity as a financial analyst, offered views that might be interpreted as supportive of a position taken by the administration.
So your argument is
I have no reason.
He has just always been professional in his conduct.
I hold no brief for Dennis Chung or any other person for that matter.
But do you
However, the point I'm making is I have no reason to question
his
the
integrity.
gentleman's professionalism. I have absolutely none. And I find it very unfortunate that the opposition has taken a posture where they appear prepared to tear down a Jamaican who they turn to. Yes? When the NSWMA was mired in scandal under a PNP activist, they turned to Dennis Chung to turn it around and indeed commended him for so doing. He was good enough to make them money or assist them in making money at DB&G, but he's not good enough to serve as FID Chief Technical Director. How unfortunate.
Senator, do you acknowledge, though, that the timing and the perception, especially near elections, matter as much as substance?
I am of the view that independent bodies are to do what they have to do concerning key appointments, regardless of whether it's a couple of years before or moments before an election. I think we're a mature democracy. And we don't have to be so cynical. I mean, are you saying that the PSC should say, hold off on the appointment until thereafter? Even Bunting was calling for an appointment to be made. He was. And you were saying that the guy who's at the FID perhaps is not capable. And now you have an individual who has the qualifications of at least 2 people, like Lamore, who have served in the top job. And the opposition was silent when they questioned Dennis Chung. There might well be more than meets the eye, Kwame, and I keep going back to DB&G. You know, the controversial meltdown of the financial system in the 1990s. And Dennis Chung was...
there.
Yeah, man. Manager of finance at DB&G. I wonder why are they so uncomfortable? They being the opposition led by Mark Golding and Peter Bunting. Why are they so uncomfortable with Dennis Chung?
What role, though, should communication play in these particular appointments? Because one of the issues that we have seen, and some persons have even gone as far as to say that the government's or the JLP's posture towards it is that, yes, communication is there, but it's usually not timely, or it's poor, or something to that effect. You know, what role should communication play in these particular appointments?
You know, my view is this, and I'm chairman of the Jamaica Labour Party's Communication Task Force. I was hesitant to comment on the matter because out of regard for the PSC and any individual who is appointed to a key post at the FID. And I'll tell you why I was hesitant. I believe far too often the good name of public servants or Jamaicans who have served across the public and private sector, that their names are, you know, brought into the mud because of byplay between the opposition and the government, or the opposition party and the governing party. However, I had to make a judgment call because the question was, would we allow the false narratives of the opposition, the lies being told, to take hold? We had to rebut it. So, ordinarily speaking, in an ideal environment where you have an honest opposition who is not willing to besmirch the good name of a hard-working, competent Jamaican, I believe political parties should stay silent on appointments to law enforcement agencies.
So you're saying that...
I really believe so.
Your reaction was definitely in response to the opposition being mendacious, that they drew you out, you say?
Yes. and you know what? We had to contemplate that this is an opposition that has a track record of attacking senior office holders in law enforcement. They demanded the resignation of Major General Anthony Anderson when he was busy assisting the administration in laying the platform for a 44% decline in murders. The PNP Patriots called for him to quit or be fired. They attacked Paula Vanessa Llewellyn, yes, Jamaica's first female prosecutor, and demanded all kinds of things. A woman who has prosecuted Labour Right, and she has prosecuted PNP. But Dayton Campbell went on a political platform and said, Paula Gaya Yard. And I hope the Jamaican people, I invite the Jamaican people
to pay attention.
To pay keen attention to the proclivity of the opposition, to target Jamaicans who have served well. Kwame, they have served well across administrations. It can't be good.
So would the government, because, you know, I've asked this question earlier of Mr. Pryce, but would the government support mechanisms such as parliamentary hearings for major appointments such as this one?
Such as the FID appointment?
Yes.
I will give you my view not as a spokesperson for the government per se, but as a keen observer of current affairs and as a lawmaker. I observe what happens in the United States of America, and where certain key appointments are subjected to a parliamentary process, and there are two arguments. There are pros and there are cons. The pro is that it might augur well for transparency.
Yeah, but
where, you know, questions can be asked. But what also happens in the US is that oftentimes the key office holder gets brought into the political fray, and that's unfortunate. You know, it tarnishes the good name of individuals who have served, have intention to give good service, and are unfortunately brought before a parliament, and politicians do what we often do, play politics. So it's a matter that I think is worthy of consideration, though I have not come down on either side yet. I have to give that one more thought. Yes.
Are there any reassurances, though, that you have an offer, you know, for future appointments, you know, that they will be more transparent and publicly accountable?
I don't know that the appointment concerning Dennis Chung lacks any element of transparency compared to what has gone on before. There has been nothing different done in terms of the appointment of when a police commissioner was appointed across administrations. The Police Services Commission supervised that. You know, there wasn't any public demand for documents and explanation of the processes. But you know what I think has happened, Kwame?
Tell us.
I recall once I was in media. A police commissioner was appointed, and a senior member of the opposition was able to say to me off the record, I won't name him because he said it off the record.
Yeah, that's necessary.
That he got the commissioner he wanted. Perhaps it is that that individual is of the view that a Jamaica Labour Party administration operates in that manner, where we insist on getting who we want to act in a position that is supposed to be independent. Perhaps that is what is weighing on the mind of the opposition.
And you're saying that's not the case?
To the best of my knowledge, absolutely not. The administration of Prime Minister Andrew Holness does not operate in that manner.
But you admit, though, that the room for improvement is typically the largest room in the House. So therefore, even if, as you have stated, this process is transparent, you know, aren't there other measures that you could implement to make it even more transparent? And what would some of those be?
What I was about to ask you, what measures are you suggesting?
No, I'm asking, you know, you are the policymaker here.
Well, look, all systems are imperfect. Yes. And I know the administration of which I'm a part is open to suggestions from good people like you, members of civil society, the ones who are not partisan, concerning how to make better the systems which guide key appointments. You know, we are not an arrogant administration. Our ears are open, and we take good ideas, we take good suggestions, and we bring them on board, and we seek to improve and make better processes. So that's the disposition of the administration of the Jamaica Labour Party.
So as we draw to a close now, the statement was made earlier by Mr. Raymond Pryce that it's time now for us to throw off some of the colonial vestiges. I'm not quoting him verbatim, you know, so we need to change from the titular head of the government, well, not government, but the public services. We need to get an executive president. We need to get a number of other things so that we can be seen on the world stage as a country that's growing, as a country that's evolving. So we have our own systems. Do you share that particular view?
Well, I can go a bit beyond whether I share that view. It certainly
well, does the government?
It certainly is the view of the Andrew Holness-led administration that Jamaica should move away from His Majesty the King as the head of state. And we have made moves towards causing that to happen.
But,
you know, you knew there was a but coming. And we had a situation where, despite the opposition leader, an individual who had said he had to contemplate and agonize about whether he had he was willing to commit fully to Jamaica as a citizen of Jamaica only, despite the opposition leader committing to moving ahead with this process of moving away from the vestiges, as the individual you alluded to said, of colonialism, despite the opposition leader saying, look here, let's do it on a phased basis. Let us proceed concerning areas that we agree. Yes? He has turned back on his word and is now bringing the Privy Council into the argument. And therefore, the process of Jamaica deposing of the UK monarchy as head of state has stalled. So, Pryce has made a point which might have validity, that it is time for Jamaica to move away from the relics of colonialism.
However,
but he should have a word with his leader, who is putting forward an impediment to the process of Jamaica achieving that. But you know what? I have a view on it. I think the Jamaican people will ultimately examine that and make a judgment. They know who it is that is blocking the process of Jamaica moving away from the UK-based monarchy. And that is the opposition leader, Mark Golding, an individual who not too long ago said he had to contemplate and agonize and pray, he said, about whether he wanted to give up his UK citizenship when he was outed and disclosed to be a UK citizen. Very, very unfortunate. And in 10 seconds, I just would say, Kwame, this matter of Dennis Chung that the opposition has put forward, I genuinely believe it has been put forward as a distraction because they cannot debate the government and our performance. Yes? Unemployment and poverty rate, record low. Never before in Jamaica have we seen such low levels of poverty and unemployment. And murders down by 44%. They have nothing to debate us on. And therefore they seek to cast aspersions and muddy the water. This is a performing government.
It's a performing government.
Performing government.
In light of what you said, though, you know, we definitely need to have you back here in this seat. And I look forward to having that conversation with you because there are lots of things that have come to mind now that are there in the public that we need to have these kinds of discussions on. So I look forward, you know, to your commitment to return again. So
I will be back, and I will. I believe this sort of discourse is important, and I want to commend you and the team at Ceen, the entire team, for the good job that you have been doing in keeping Jamaicans aware. Objectivity and fairness is all that we ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was the conversation. I'm Kwame Thomas. The appointment of Dennis Chung has sparked more than debate. It's exposed fault lines in our systems of governance, from process to perception. It's clear we have got work to do. Catch the replay on YouTube, the Ceen app, and see you next Sunday at 8 p.m. 9 Eastern Caribbean time on The Conversation. Do have yourselves a blessed rest of evening.